economic, social, and cultural concern. So I will be presenting on APSU, which is the African Peace and Security Architecture that we put in place in Africa to allow us to have a peaceful Africa. As we said in the African Union on the Agenda 2063, that we want an integrated, peaceful, and prosperous Africa. Because in order to have economic development, in order to have prosperity, we need peace on the continent. Without peace, we cannot do business. Without peace, we cannot promote our business. So because of that, we want peace on the continent. So next slide. Next. So this is African map, and in this map, as you can see, those are countries that are in conflict on the continent. And we have 7 hotspot countries, zone of conflict on the continent. We have in the North Africa, we have Libya, which is in conflict. We have on the Sahel region, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, which are a zone of conflict. We also have on the Great Lake region, meaning eastern part of DRC, Burundi, Rwanda, which are also a zone of conflict. We have on the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia and Somalia, which is also another hotspot zone of conflict. And we have on the Chad Lake Basin, meaning Nigeria, Cameroon, and Chad, which is another hotspot conflict zone. And we have in East and Central African region, Sudan, South Sudan, and Central African Republic, which is also another hotspot zone of conflict. So as you can see on the map, there is conflict almost everywhere. And Southern Africa in the past was not a zone of conflict, but conflict has even come to the southern part of the continent, as you can see in Mozambique, which is another hotspot zone of conflict. So we need peace in those areas. Africa is full of conflict, currently speaking, and we want all of us to be united in order to make sure that we have peace on the continent, because the hotspot zone is almost everywhere, from north to the south, from east to west, and even in Central Africa. Next. So due to the fact that there is conflict all over the continent, the head of states and government put in place an agenda that is called Agenda 2063. And in the Agenda 2063, there is 7 aspirations of African people, because the aspiration came from African citizens, and the expert on the African Union level put in place that agenda, which is called Agenda 2063. And the 4th aspiration of the Agenda 2063 is for a peaceful and secure Africa. That is the 4th aspiration of the Agenda 2063. And goal 13 of that agenda is for a peaceful, security, and stability preserved. And we have also goal 14, which is a stable and peaceful Africa, and goal 15 elaborate on a fully functional and operational African peace and security architecture, is what I'm going to talk about this morning, about the APSU, which is the African Peace and Security Architecture. In May 2013, during the 15th anniversary of the African organization, the Organization of the African Unity, now called the African Union, African head of state and government made a solemn declaration and pledged not to leave the burden of war to next generation, and undertook to end wars by 2020. So the goals of the African head of state and government was to silence the guns by 2020. but now it has been postponed by 2030 for us to make sure that we silence the guns and we bring peace and security on the continent. And in January 2017, African Union Head of State and Government endorsed what we call the African Union Master Roadmap for practical steps for silencing the guns in Africa by 2030 now, and in support of African Agenda 2063 and the aspiration of a peaceful and secure Africa. So the roadmap of practical steps to silence the guns is based on the principle that Africa should assertively assume total responsibility for its destiny by fostering lasting peace and stability on the continent. Next. And the African Union also put in place a framework which is for conflict prevention, conflict management, and conflict resolution on the continent. And the APSU embraced a comprehensive agenda for a peace and security in Africa that includes early warning, because we put in place a framework in order to allow us to promote peace and security in Africa. And that part of the framework, we have what we call early warning and conflict prevention in order to prevent conflict in Africa. And we also made a peacemaking, peace support operation, peace building, and post-conflict reconstruction and development. Because once we promote peace in Africa, we need also to promote development, because peace goes together with development. Because of that, we have also economic growth, or economic opportunities to promote that peace. And also we have the promotion of democratic practices, good governance, and respect of human rights. And also we take some humanitarian action and disaster management. So the main pillar of APSU is the Peace and Security Council of the African Union. They got the sole responsibility from the head of state and government to make sure that APSU is fully operationalized and fully implemented. And it's supported by other structures, such as regional organizations, such as Peace Fund, the Panel of the Wise, the Continental Early Warning System, the African Standby Force, because Africa do have African Standby Force, which was deployed in Somalia and in other parts of the continent. The relationship between the African Union, which has the primary responsibility for promoting peace, security, and stability in Africa, and the regional economic communities, as well as regional mechanism, and also we have also specialized agencies that are allowed to promote peace and security on the continent. And the head of state put also what we call the peace and security protocols that provide partnership between the AU on the one hand and the United Nations and other relevant international stakeholders on the other hand. So we do have a protocols that allow also civil society organization, because the purpose is not only peace matter be only on the head of states and government level. We want people at the grassroots level to own the peace process, to own what is happening in terms of peace and security on the continent. That's why there were a protocol that has been put in place, which is called the BSC protocol. Strengthening the African peace architecture refer to initiatives and strategies aimed at improving the effectiveness of the APSU and also the framework for conflict prevention, management, and resolution on the continent. Key areas of action for strengthening APSU include strategic reform. Institutional reform are essential to improving policy coherence and operationalize effectiveness. So we also have efforts that are underway, including the review of APSU commissioned by the African Union Peace and Security Council to adapt it to African complex and evolving security landscape. So we also have on the early warning system, we also have regional cooperation in which all the regions are together to cooperate on the matter of peace, such as SADC for the Southern Africa, ECOWAS for West Africa, ECAS for Central Africa, East African Community, and so on. So the mechanisms are put in place to allow them also to promote peace and security in line with continental organizations such as the African Union. The objective is to harmonize effort and ensure complementary actions, because I want to emphasize on the complementary actions, because it has to be complementary, and build a strong partnership with the United Nations and other international stakeholders. This initiative aims to enable the African Union to use the instrument of the African Peace and Security Agreement architecture more effectively to prevent conflict, manage crises, and consolidate peace within its member state, within the framework of Aspiration 4 of the African Union Agenda 2063, which is a peaceful and secure Africa. So we have here full operationalization of the APSU. I will, for the sake of time, so we have the Commission intensify its effort to find lasting solutions. We also have the strategy framework for post-conflict reconstruction and development, what we call the PCRG, which was implemented. We also have activities in the area of disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration, what we call the DDR process, which has been done successfully in South Sudan, in Central African Republic, and in other parts of Africa where there is conflict. So we have the mechanism of GDR. I think it was also done in Cote d'Ivoire, in which we encourage people to surrender their arms, and also to include them in the society by giving them the skills and so on. So we have that framework. We also make sure that within the APSU, the youth are involved into the peace process. So we put in place the Youth for Peace in Africa program, which was launched, aimed to implement Article 17 of the African Youth Charter, with the goal of facilitating the meaningful participation of young Africans in all peace and security efforts, and the study was undertaken in that regard. Next. So we have also what we call the multinational joint task force that has been put in place and conducted for offensive and defensive operation against Boko Haram group in Nigeria. So we have that joint force from countries which was operational, but currently, due to some political issues, is not yet full operationalized, but it was operationalized. And we also have that joint force. We also have an important to commend troops contributing countries, and also make sure that Africans own the solutions towards peace and security on the continent. Next. So we have all those programs that have been put in place, like a new operational concept and doctrine that have been developed and are being finalized for facilitating adaptation of the changing peace and security landscape in Africa. Next. So, and also we have the meeting of ministers of defense that gathered and brainstormed together in order to adapt to the concept, to adapt on the African landscape, and make sure that we contribute according to the specific needs of each African country that need peace and security on the continent. Next. So those are the different structures that have been put in place in order to make sure that we promote peace and security in Africa. We also have the panel of the wives of former president, former prime ministers, former ministers of foreign affairs that come together and brainstorm on how we can put in place strategies to promote peace and security on the continent. Next. So I wanted to emphasize also on the CSO, civil society organization, private sector contribution to peace and security in Africa. So there were a protocol of the African Union that is called the Livingstone Formula. And the Livingstone Formula is the protocol that the head of states and government put in place in order to allow civil society organizations, private sector, to participate fully in peace and security matters on the continent. So we have on the conflict prevention, which is the early warning system, the CSOs or private sectors may, if you can go back, may provide technical support to the AU field and fact-finding mission and regional organization by undertaking early warning reporting and situation analysis. So this is your contribution towards the peace of the continent. So you can work on the early warning system by providing those support, and also you can assist in enhancing the research and analysis process that feed information into the decision-making process of the peace and security concept. Next. You can also work with us on peacemaking and mediation, because we need mediation in order to promote peace and to make sure that there is conflict resolution. So CSO may assist and advise the mediation team during negotiation. CSO can provide information to special envoys, representatives of the chairperson of the commission, and also may also participate in giving publicity to the peacemaking process. One of the challenges we have is that there is not enough publicity on what action that has been taken by the AU level. So we want CSOs also to help us to be involved in giving publicity on peace process, on what the AU is doing, on what the African Union, the action that they are taking. So we want to invite CSOs and private sector as well to help us in publicity of the actions and decisions that are being taken in mediation and peacemaking. We can also work in peacekeeping. Following the signing of peace agreement, CSOs may assist in complementary manner the AU and the Peace and Security Council to advise effective process to ensure that the parties to a conflict are assisted in the implementation of peace agreements. Next. We can also work in a humanitarian peace building and the PCRD, which is post-conflict reconstruction and development effort. After the signing, you can also work in a complementary to the effort of the PS to also help us promote peace and security within the specific area and the specific country. So,
Your Excellency, if you may pause, colleagues at the back, we're hearing more of your noise than what is happening here. Thank you.
Yes, so next. So we also have a provision and technical support. So if you have skills on peace and security, you can also provide in terms of environmental rehabilitation issue to enable local population to resume normal activities. Also in training, we can provide a training session and workshop to impart skills and knowledge on peace building for specific parties to a conflict. Next. And also we work on monitoring and impact assessment, also in post-conflict situation and advocacy, publicity of the Peace and Security Council decisions. So those are the scope of area. We have conflict management, peace building, prevention and combating terrorism, use of child soldiers. We have drugs and arms traffic, illicit proliferation of small arms and light weapons, and we also have a security sector reform. Because what we have noticed is that Africa have more or less 5 security models. We have the French model of security, we have English model, Arabic model, Portuguese model, even Spanish model. So we want to make an African model of security. And then we are undertaking studies in order to make a security sector reform so that we can have also our own African model of security. And also, as I was telling about the Livingstone formula, which is the mechanism that allows civil society to participate in the promotion of peace, security, and stability of Africa. Next. And those mechanisms for the interaction of CSOs and peace and security in the promotion of peace, I've already talked about it. Next. And we also have the overview of, this is the overview of the master roadmaps for practical steps to silence the guns in Africa by 2030. So this is an overview of it, in which is the silencing the guns is the flagship program under Pillar 4 of Agenda 2063, focused on peaceful and secure Africa by 2063. So we have those programs. Next. And ECOSOC, which is the Economic, Social and Cultural Council of the African Union, is in charge, is one of the key partners that should implement those roadmaps and also the Livingstone formula. Next. So we have APSU based its work on legal and policy context, because APSU does not work in a vacuum. So there is legal and policy context. So we have the Livingstone formula, we have the Maseru report, we have the Agenda 2063 and the 2020 silencing the guns in Africa. We have also the regional strategy for stabilization, recovering and peace and building. We have the African Union Nouakchott peace process on the Mali and the Sahel, and we have also the Common African Defense and Security Policy. So those are the legal framework that allows private sectors, civil society to interact with the Peace and Security Council on the matter of peace and security in Africa. Next. So those are the strategic priority area and contribution. We can contribute into support the African Union Peace and Security Council policy and decision-making process, lobbying, advocacy, publicity of the AU decision. We can also work on conflict prevention, stabilization and peacekeeping, border security and management program. We can also work on humanitarian peace building, training and capacity, as I said earlier, and also building partnership with relevant external CSOs and network on peace and security in Africa. So we encourage to build that coalition of CSOs, private sectors, to contribute to the peaceful Africa. And we can also develop advisory opinion on issue priority concern to the Peace and Security Council consideration. So maybe there is a situation in one of the countries of Africa, you can also provide an advisory opinion, provide information to the mission field, also participate in the workshop meetings of the Pan-African Parliament, the African Peace and Security Council, and other structure of the AU. So next, those are the lobbying and advocacy and publicity of the decision. Next, we can also work on conflict prevention, as I said earlier. Next, and also on, this is for how you can contribute for border and security management by providing the fact-finding information on the ground. Next. So those are the training and capacity building initiatives. So we can empower us. We also empower civil society that are interested on the field of peace and security on the continent. We do also monitoring and impact assessment of the implementation of peace agreement. We build partnership. We also build partnership with relevant external CSOs and institution network on peace, security and stability in Africa. Next. And a fully functional and operationalized African peace and security architecture. So we have the implementation of regional and continental agreement in the context of APSU, provide African CSOs with capacity at local, national, and continental levels. We also ensure that they are well equipped, competent national structures, and in order to undertake their operation and also provide this is the communication strategy that we use to make sure that our agenda is well communicated to the people, and people at the grassroots level can be involved on the peace and security matter. Next. So those are the continental and development sensitization program. We update APSU to cover piracy, drugs, and fight against human trafficking and so on. Next. So those are the continental implementation program that has been put in place on the national, regional, and continental level. And those are the challenges that we do experience with regards to APSU, the operationalization of APSU, with lack or weak of implementation of post-conflict reconstruction and development program, non-completion of border delimitation, maritime insecurity. So those are the challenges that we face on daily basis, in which we're working on to correct them and to make sure that they become a success story. Next. These are on economic aspect, social aspect as well. Next. This is environmental aspect, legal aspect. Next. And these are some indicators that we have in the implementation of the peace and security agenda on the continent. And in conclusion, we need African ownership of the peace process. That's what we are advocating for. We want every African to become a peace ambassador in his village, in his community, in his region, in his country, and at the continent at large, in order for us to achieve the Africa we want, which is an integrated, peaceful, and prosperous Africa. I thank you.
Your Excellency, this was very informative indeed. I've noted that Maman Fili has taken good notes, and it's a bit worrying to see that on the continent there is so many zones of conflict, and we can see how conflict can impact the social life, the economic life of a country. Meaning that as long as Africa is not in peace at all, our business, our project, our investment are compromised. I wanted to find out, Your Excellency, where can you be found if there is a need for further engagement?
Yeah, for further engagement, you have my business card,
Yeah.
so we can interact, or you can go to the AU website to get some information. But I'm available to engage anyone who would like to have more information about the peace and security on the continent.
Yeah. So, any question maybe before we move to the next item on the program?
There's a hand there.
There's a hand there at the back for a question. Please just raise your hand again so that the microphone. Donc c'était là une présentation sur les questions de conflit en Afrique, sachant que sans la paix en Afrique, il ne peut y avoir de vie sociale, il ne peut y avoir de vie économique, il ne peut y avoir d'investissement. Et c'est étonnant de voir dans la présentation qui nous a été faite combien de pays sur le continent sont en conflit. Tant que l'Afrique n'aura pas retrouvé la paix, il sera difficile de pouvoir voyager, de pouvoir investir et de pouvoir développer le continent. C'était très important d'avoir cette présentation et nous en remercions l'ambassadeur Ngomat. Il y avait une question, a question at the back.
Hi, my name is Amidi. I want to ask a question. How can African own a peace process security? One, we all know that 90% of African countries are not free.
Are not?
Free, they are not free at all.
Okay.
Not free in which way?
In any way, they don't own their democracy, they don't own their food, they don't own sport, they don't own anything that we can think of.
Yeah, that's why we talk about the security
Even
sector
their education,
reform.
they don't own it.
That's why I talk about the security sector reform, in which we have put in place a system in order to reform our security sector so that we can have and Africa security model. And in that security sector reform, we want every African to be part of the journey. And we want African ownership of the peace process in the continent. And we want that civil society, government, private sector work hand with hand in order to achieve the Africa we want, which is a peaceful Africa.
I'm not so happy with your response because I want to see the concrete, like metrics. You've got the system, you've done research, how we can measure what you guys are doing.
In terms of...
I'm at my home, I can check. This is what has happened, and there's a changes between last month and last year. We haven't seen it on Peace in Africa.
There is a lot that has been done. For example, in Central African Republic, it was a country that there were no law. And it was only conflict there. You could not even...
How did they reach that point?
Yes, I'm coming to you. You could not even travel there because there were conflict everywhere. But because of the action that we are doing, we put in place a system, what we call the DDR process, in which is disarmament, in which we brought all the parties together, and we told them clearly that we need a peace in that country. And today, Central African Republic is one of the countries that are making African proud because there is a security there, you can go and invest there, you can do your business there, but before it was not possible. Because of the action that we have taken, today we can say we are proud of what we have achieved in that country. South Sudan, for example, was a country, there was massacres there, but today, that country is being stable and is now working properly as a country should work. So there is a lot of example. Even in Mozambique, 2 years ago, people were afraid to go to Mozambique, but because of the Peace and Security Council, because Africans take ownership of the peace process in that country, today Mozambique is stabilizing and people can go and do business in Mozambique. So there is a lot of examples, a lot of showcase. Somalia, for example, was a country, we all watch TV, was a country who was a disaster there. But today, Somalia is recovering. So the peace process in Africa is duly working, and we want to do more. So we want to encourage each African to be an actor and not a spectator.
Excellency, thank you. We see that there's more room for engagement. You can meet with Ambassador Ngoma and engage with him later. We're going to move to the next item. Flight Gabon would like to do a little raffle and to offer some prize. Charmaine is going to explain to us what to do to win a free ticket.
Okay, so I'm hijacking the event, sorry.